Okay, this is a test. Not sure how well it's going to work. But this is author Kris Endicott, and I'm doing a little bit of brainstorming on this recording. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so what I'd like to do is on Wenebojo.com, what I'd like to do is not say so many times. Okay, let's try this one more time. What I'd like to do is go to Wenebojo.com, which is what I've got up here open on the window. And there is this nifty, at least for writers, page on the website called Inanna's Game. And if you go there we go. What this is a set of prompts that change about every 2 weeks. And it's just to get the creative juices flowing, to give you something to start from that you might not have thought of before. And the game is that if you'd like, you can post the short story on our blog for other people to read, which is kind of fun. Or you can just write it for your own entertainment or to publish if that's what you'd like to do. But the prompts are here for you. And what we have is 3 things. We have snippets, which are little bits of descriptive passages. We have scenes, which is kind of a setting for your story. And we have characters. Now, the snippets, we'd like you to try and fit into your story as close to that as possible, somewhere in the story. If you're writing a sci-fi and the one that calls to you of the 3 options is definitely set in contemporary, well, then fudge it. Just kind of make it as close to the original as possible, but in your story setting. The other 2, the scenes and the characters, those are a starting off point. If it's a man and your main character is a woman, change it to fit you. If it's got more stuff there than you need in your story, ignore the stuff you don't need. It's a starting place, and it gives you background about the character that you may not use very much of it in your actual story, but it forms the character. So the idea here is to grab 1 snippet, 1 scene, and 1 character, and start your story from there. So I like to brainstorm on something called Scapple. Yeah, I can pronounce things. It's a way that I can freeform put ideas down. And over here, I have the snippets and characters and scenes written down. So I'm going to take these and copy them over into here as a starting place. If you just bear with me for a minute here. And this is just my process. It's not exactly outlining, although it forms the starting point for me to outline something if I if I do the brainstorming on Scapple, and I have to get around my iPad to see my screen because I had to put the camera right there so you guys could look me in the face. Okay, here we are. Scene 2. And this is a video I'd kind of like to do often. So the next time I do this, I'll start with these already in here in the Scapple. But I just kind of wanted to start from the beginning just so you had an idea of what my process was. And character 1. And part of the reason why I like using brainstorming software is because I can take these things and move them around and connect them to things and unconnect them from things. So it kind of takes the straight lines and rulers out of my thinking process and allows me to make the connections for me more creatively. And the last one, character 3. Okay. So we'll get rid of that. So I have snippet 1, which is a faint perfume painted the air and called to those that walked near. If someone was bemused enough to follow their nose, the playful sounds of light music would reach their ears within only a few steps. If the awakening of that sense encouraged them to continue their journey, their eyes cleared as an unnoticed fog dissipated, and they were struck motionless by the sight that was revealed. That to me either sounds fantasy, the whole thing with the fog dissipating, or if I change the fog just a little bit. Okay, this is, you may not know what I'm talking about, but I'm thinking if it was not a fog, but walking through one of those mylar string curtains. The silver thin mylar stuff that's been cut into all sorts of little bitty strings and hanging from a doorway so that you have to brush it aside. You can't see through it when it's hanging, and you have to brush it aside. So it could be a contemporary setting, and rather than a fog, you can't see into the other room because there's this screening blocking the door. And as you walk through, now you see the sight on the other side of the doorway. So you don't have to use these exactly as they're written. It's a jumping off spot. Okay, so the next one, snippet 2. He could hear the thudding of heavy feet approaching him from the left, while a faint scraping of something hard rubbing over the stone pathways on his right warned him that he had more than one enemy approaching. Okay. Military sci-fi, adventure, lit RPG, fantasy. Those are all things that I can see that snippet being used for. Snippet 3. The wind whistled around the corners and through cracks in the worn window frames. The sharp trill sounded almost like a voice calling out either for help or in warning. The dropping temperatures cracked on the moisture in the air, and throwing moist breath on scarves and beards. That could be almost anything. So, all right, let's scene 1. And again, when we decide on a story, we'll pick one from each column. So, scene 1. The story library was deserted except for a single elderly librarian. The man was hunched over his desk, studying something intently, and only nodded at a half-hearted greeting. The room itself was huge, with ladders to access the high bookshelves on each level. Are you seeing the Library from Beauty and Beast here? Because I am. Also the Library of Congress and all those kinds of cool buildings. The room itself was huge, with ladders to access the high bookshelves on each level. Dual staircases made access to the second and third floor possible. Books were crammed in willy-nilly everywhere. An observer might be surprised to know that there was some sort of method to the filing system, but without a librarian's help, it would be hopeless to find something specific. Contemporary, romance, again, definitely a fantasy, children's stories. A lot of possibilities there. Let me make this just a little bit bigger again. There we go. Scene 2. The commander's office was Spartan. I think that the commander's office was Spartan with furnishings, but crammed with maps and bound journals. Unheated even now in the depths of winter, the hardwood chairs were cold and the frost on the windows inside were thick. Okay. Definitely military, commander's office, but could be the principal's office in a school. Could be a boarding school like Harry Potter. Yeah, that could go a number of ways. And if you were going for sci-fi or military sci-fi, doesn't have to be bound journals and maps. It could be data tablets all over the place. So, just think about how you can just tweak it to get into different genres, into the stories you like to write. Scene 3. Flames leaped from the huge bonfire in a circle in the center of the benches. Right now, only a few people were watching the fire and conversing, but very soon, the area would be packed with more than 200 people sharing the experience of the joint celebration. Well, right now on the calendar, it's close to Christmas time. So this could be a Hallmark type romance story where they've got a bonfire going and everybody's drinking hot chocolate just before they go to the tree lighting. It could be a fantasy with elves and dwarves, and it could be a military fantasy, which I guess would just be fantasy at that point. But it could be soldiers in a fantasy a bonfire on their victory. Okay, let's go to character 1. The man is strong looking, but quiet. He is supporting and raising 2 children by himself and frequently seems somewhat sad. Decisive and calm, his voice is a rumbling baritone, and his bright eyes and seldom seem... I typed this over myself from the website, so there may be a few typos. Let's try that sentence again. Decisive and calm, His voice is a rumbling baritone, and his bright eyes and seldom seen smile appear to be very attractive to the opposite sex. Between his job and his children, he has forgotten how to relax and have fun. This offers both a challenge and a deterrent to a relationship. Okay. This character can definitely be used in almost any kind of genre story. It could also be changed to a woman. Strong and quiet. A single mother supporting and raising 2 children by herself. You can definitely, between her job and her children, she's forgotten how to relax and have fun. So that works. Character 2. The woman is mobility impaired, but determined to live her life as best she can. Despite multiple dramatic events in her history, she tries to assume an optimistic appearance to everyone she meets, even her best friends. Only when she is alone does the wellspring of fear raise its head. Every once in a while, she has to find reassurances that the path she has chosen in her life is the right one. Sometimes the way she looks for support can be a bit strange. Now, as I was writing these out, this one of all 9 of the little bits called to me because I have a science fiction adventure story that I've written. I'm not sure if I published anything in that story, but I know I've written things in that universe. And I have a woman fighter pilot as one of the characters in the Firefly-like group of characters on this cargo ship. And she was a fighter pilot. Accident happened. She lost the use of her legs, which in their world meant she could no longer fly military. So she had implants put into the palms of her hands that allow her to interface with the ship, and she can actually fly the ship by sharing her mind with the ship's computers. So I see that as being something I could write about in that series. Now, in the story that I'd written previously, she was a secondary character. But yeah, I could definitely write something about her. So going in and just grabbing the last of the things on character. Character 3. The creature moves awkwardly. Its 3 legs give it an unusual gait and draw the eye. Not aggressive and somewhat shy, it still is not easy to control. However, its enthralling voice and iridescent pelt make it a challenge worth the effort. Okay, so on first reading, on this one, you would look at it and go, well, that's only fantasy or sci-fi, because you've got a 3-legged creature with an iridescent pelt. How can it be anything but sci-fi or fantasy? Well, what if it's a mule that's hobbling along on 3 legs because the other leg is hurt? And now you're going to say a mule doesn't have an iridescent pelt, but the mule would, it's got a blanket draped over him that's iridescent. So you could use this in historical, in a Western, in a contemporary. You could use this anywhere just by making it fit what you would think would work in your genre of story. Okay, so if I want... Oh, I set the light up and never turned it on. There we go. Now you can really see me. Maybe I should turn it back off. Wow, that's bright. Okay, so if I'm... Actually, I want to try doing something with this three-legged creature. So if I've got the three-legged creature, and what if he's a messenger? And he got hurt bringing the message to the commander. Lost his rider. But he's like a homing pigeon. This Spartan outpost is where his home is, and he knows how to get back to it. So even though he's hurt and his rider is dead and left behind, or maybe his rider fell off, couldn't get back on, and told the creature, go home. And after a while, the creature begrudgingly left its rider and went home. Because whatever the message was that needed to get through was tied to the creature's saddle. So, which one of these could we use? The thudding of feet approaching. Okay. Here we go. So, let's go historical. The creature is a donkey. Iridescent. Saddle blanket. I don't think donkeys are known for their enthralling voices, but I won't talk about his voice, so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, so those two things come off of there. He could hear the thudding. Okay, so this is the rider. He's a spy. Coming back from behind enemy lines. And then this is he's been betrayed. And there's an ambush. Okay, so he's a spy coming back from behind enemy lines. There's this ambush. He's been betrayed. And the way I'm the way I'm putting lines between things, they probably don't make sense to anybody else, but in my mind it's just keeping the clues together. So the other things I was thinking was that important message in saddlebag. So he's in an ambush, injured, can't, he's left for dead. Dead. The important message in the saddlebag is hidden, so they don't find it. No, the saddlebag is not hidden, the message is hidden. Okay. Left for dead. Devoted donkey won't leave him. He tries reasoning, pleading, and the donkey doesn't leave. So he eventually, the only thing that works is he finds stones and has to throw stones at the donkey to get him to leave. So finally the donkey leaves. Leaves, and he's homing pigeon. Hopefully that's spelled right. And he's kind of like a homing pigeon. He knows where home is. And then somehow or other he gets to camp and the message saves the day. This isn't my genre. Can you tell by the fact that I just kind of dropped it? Message saves day. And that's where maybe the commander's the only one that knows where he would have hidden the message on the saddle, because it's his oldest and dearest friend, and he's hidden things there before. So, okay, so that's one story that I could write for this. And there's magnetic. Okay. All right, so I'm going to toss this off where it's not in my way. Okay. What's another story I could write? The library and the perfume in the air. Now, we already talked about how we could use this character in a sci-fi. What if she's with this grouping? What could we do with that? Now, one thing I wanted to say about all of this prompts with Inanna's game, we could all start from the same prompts. You could even start from the same story thoughts that I've put on here. And you and I would write totally different stories because we have different voices. So I want to make sure that you understand that these story prompts are to be used any way you want. And if you use them, they're your stories. Wenebojo has no claim on them. If you want to use any story ideas that I've come up with in this video or any of the other Wenebojo Inanna's Game videos that will be coming out, hopefully, if I can keep it up. If you like any of the story ideas, you are more than welcome to write a story to it. Because again, ideas are not patentable. Stories written down or put into a permanent form are copyrightable. Ideas and lists are not copyrightable. Now, granted, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not giving legal advice, but look it up yourself. Ideas are not patentable. They have to be in some kind of usable form. And for storytelling, that usable form is the story. What I have here is a story idea. It's not a story. So again, if what you see here or anything in the Inanna's Game videos that I'll put up, if they spark ideas for you to write a story, go for it. It's your story, it's your copyrightable. So, getting back to where we were before I went off on that tangent. School library. It's got multiple layers. We've got floor-to-ceiling bookshelves that extend multiple floors. I want to be in this place. I can see lots of polished oak and curving staircases between levels. And of course, it's got to have that sliding ladder. I love those. Okay, I'm already sitting in the setting of the world. Which is what stories are supposed to do. At least for me, they're an escape into another world. And I have been a lifelong reader and fallen in love with one setting or character after another as I read books. And when I became an author, that's what I wanted to do, was to give someone else the escapist entertainment that I've always gotten out of stories. So if one of my stories does that for you, I'm glad. If it doesn't, maybe another author's will. So, school library with the faint perfume painted on the air. Okay, we're headed for fantasy here, because if we've got this library and we've got a woman that's always optimistic, if she goes into the back area of this huge library where people seldom go, and there's a portal. She pulls one of the ancient dusty tomes off of a bookshelf, and fog starts to roll in. Now, she tries to leave, and the way she came, something happens and knocks books down. So she can't leave that way because maybe she's in a wheelchair, and now her way is blocked by the downed books. And it's a large enough avalanche of books that she can't easily move them out of the way. Okay, so avalanche of books. Blockway. So, being someone that is forever trying to assume an optimistic appearance. Maybe she's also curious. And she goes toward the fog because she can hear something. Yes. She hears the playful sounds of light music, which she hadn't heard before the fog came. So she heads towards it. She keeps going. Fog clears. And she finds herself in a meadow. She finds herself in a meadow, or she finds herself in an alien landscape. Can you tell fantasy and sci-fi are some of my favorite genres? Oh, and that three-legged character. There's no rule that says you can't use more than one from each of the three types of suggestions. So what if she goes into either a meadow, reminiscent, there's the word, reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland, or to an alien landscape, and she finds this creature. And the story goes on from there. So that's another story I could head in the direction of. Magnetic, that's what I was looking for. Oh no! There we go. So that's another story that I was heading in the direction of. And yeah, that kind of is interesting. So this was to give you an idea of what you could do with the set of snippet characters and scenes that you can find on the Inanna's game page of Wenebojo. I hope it gives you some ideas. And as I said earlier, the prompts change about every 2 weeks. So what if you could write a short story every 2 weeks from this? Even if they were fairly short. At the end of a couple of months, if you did this every single 2 weeks, you'd have a collection of short stories that you could publish independently if you wanted to. Not a bad idea. Or you could just write them for your own entertainment. In either case, I hope you will return, and maybe the next time I'll have some better ideas and won't have the light out for half the video. Yeah. This will get easier as I do it. This is the first time I've done this setup, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed seeing something that could be made from these prompts. And I'll see you next time. Bye.